honor everybody's time. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Laura Jackson. I am the volunteer coordinator at AHC. So I have interacted with all of you by email and gotten to meet a few of you and hope to meet more of you in person. And I would like to turn it over to Lainey. Lainey is our literacy coordinator this year and really an awesome addition to the AHC team. So thanks for hosting us tonight, Lainey.
Well, thank you guys all for joining me and for humoring me with my question in the chat. I do love to learn new things. So I wanted to introduce myself. Today's actually my first official day working with AHC Inc. My name is Lainey Parrott. I'm the literacy and curriculum specialist. So I work with our after school program with the literacy component, and I'm helping to build some SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, and other things for all of our students and our teens. I am coming to AHC after being a third grade teacher for the last 7 years, which was wonderful and so great. And I learned so much, but needed to move out of education for a little bit. And this is such a great opportunity to still get to serve students and help people in a totally new way. My favorite book, because I asked it in the chat, is Wonder by R.J. Palacio. It's a book that I would read every year to my third graders, and they always loved it. And it is a book that is just so near and dear to my heart. It teaches about kindness and about just so many wonderful things. If you haven't read it, it is a book probably for upper elementary, middle schoolers, but it's so good. And I have a movie about it. It's great. So again, thank you for joining us. I have a few goals for our time together tonight. The first is to identify the importance of reading with our students. As volunteers, I know there's a lot of things you guys do to help our students, but one thing that is easy enough that can be done anytime you're volunteering is reading. Another is learning the strategies for engaging our students in a read aloud and exploring some of the resources that are available to you at our sites. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Reading aloud is one of the easier things that you can do as a volunteer with our students, but it's also one of the most important. So across the country right now, students are falling behind in reading due to COVID and other situations, and our students are no exception to that. So reading aloud to our students, especially our struggling readers, kind of frees them from struggling. It gives them a chance to really fall in love with reading and to enjoy reading, because you reading it out loud to them kind of takes away some of the hard. And they get to just enjoy a book to enjoy it, which is always very important. But there's also a lot of research about the importance of reading out loud. So this infographic kind of goes over a lot of the different reasons why reading out loud is important, but it helps our students in a lot of ways. One of those ways is to develop background knowledge. So our students come from all different backgrounds, but reading out loud and reading text to them kind of gives them a chance to see a world that is greater than their own or outside of their own, something different for them. And it can help them develop that background knowledge. It helps to stimulate their interest in high quality literature. If our students are struggling readers, the books that they're reading are probably not the most high quality of literature, because it's books that are at their level that they can read. A lot of times it's a decodable text or a really short story. So this gets them a chance to access literature that's of a higher quality and helps them to be more interested in it. It also increases their comprehension skills because, again, they're focusing on listening and understanding a story, and makes them think more critically, especially with questions that we ask them, but even, again, just opening their minds up to things that are beyond what their background is. It makes them think critically about the world around them. Reading also is a great way to create a sense of community, not only with you, their volunteer, but to understand that there is community to be found in a lot of things. I do think it's great that they have you guys as these wonderful volunteers, and they can build that relationship with you through reading is wonderful. You have your own little book club. It also helps our students to learn to use language and help them to figure out the world around them. Again, I'm going back to that background knowledge piece because that is such a big thing that we're bringing to our students, but having them have a chance to use language to figure that out is great too. And because just like students are struggling with reading, they're also struggling with listening across the country. This is helping them to develop good listening habits, right? To learn to sit and think, listen closely to what's being read and stuff like that. So for our students, I think it's important to engage them during your read aloud. So not just you sitting and reading to them, but allowing them to really be an active participant in the read aloud itself, right? So asking questions as you go, things like that. One of the things that you could do to make this active for everybody, for your students, is to just kind of set the stage, right? Hold up the book, go over the title, talk about the cover illustrations, maybe talk about the author, especially if it's an author who's written multiple books. Talk to them about that. Encourage them to make predictions. Let them kind of guide this and just figure out, what do you think this story is going to be about based off of the title, or maybe reading the chapters in the table of contents, or looking at a picture somewhere on there. Have them be creative and predict what could happen. Another great thing about predicting is that it changes as you go, right? So you can ask this question before you even open the book, and then maybe you read 2 pages in and you're like, oh man, that changes our prediction. What do you think now? That can just happen as you go. Read with expression is another thing I would really suggest. I know it might feel funny, but our students love it. And it also teaches them the importance of reading with expression, right? Listening to reading out loud actually helps them improve their reading fluency, because they figure out the cadence of our voices, how things go. And that is a really important tool to learning how to read. With that, read slowly, not like a robot slowly, but slowly enough that our students can build a mental image of the story that you're reading for them. They can create the world in their mind of what you're reading. And also read slowly enough and pause if there's time, if you need to pause, if they need to understand something a little bit more, if there's a vocabulary word that doesn't make sense, or the figurative language in the text is a little bit too much, slow down and kind of go over it with them. And also important to remember that they're just kids and their attention spans are not the longest. So you don't have to sit and read an entire chapter book or even a long picture book. Sometimes they're just too long to get through in one sitting, a picture book. So just stop. When they are showing you signs that they need to stop, being all squirrely and wiggly, you can just be done for the day. A great thing about doing a read aloud with our students is that it can be something that you do every time you come in. So again, you're building that sense of routine and community with them. This is your routine together. Some other ways that you can engage our students with reading aloud is setting some goals. And these 2 things, I actually have links. These are linked right here. So I'm going to send this out to Laura and she will send it out to all of you, but these are linked and it'll take you to a website called Reading is Fundamental. This calendar I love because it has something for every day. And when you click on the day of the week, it shows you like different resources, different texts, like books you could pick, questions, different things that go along with it, which is a cool way to make reading really relevant for right now and what's going on. And if you know, like your student is from a military family or something like that, every kid should recycle, right? There's just lots of different things you can be reading. So I think the reading calendar is a really cool way to set a goal or to try something new in terms of reading. Another thing is this book bingo, which I thought was really fun because it gets students out of reading just the same book. An issue that I have found with students of all ages is that, no, I like this book. No, I just want to read Bad Kitty. I just want to read Caps and Underpants. Nope, we're going to try and expand our understanding of reading, and we're going to introduce ourselves to different kinds of books. So let's try something new, right? Maybe reading a book with no pictures is a big thing for a student, and that would be something great for them to try. There's lots of these things on this Reading is Fundamental website, and I also have other things as well, but just setting some types of goals would be good. Even if it's just making a bookmark together and saying, okay, each day we're going to read 10 pages. How many days in a row can we read 10 pages together? Just something to keep them engaged, and setting a goal is a great way to do that. Also, as you are reading or when you're done reading with them for the day, asking questions is so important. And these questions can vary in their difficulty, right? It can be something as easy as, who is the main character? What character was your favorite? What was your favorite part? or something more challenging, right? What do you think the author was trying to teach you, trying to figure out the theme of a story, or how can you make a connection to the characters? What is something about you that is similar to them, or what's something about you that's different from them? So some of the questions, like I said, are maybe better for our K2 students and some are a little bit more challenging, but I will encourage you to just challenge all of our students with these questions, right? Even if it's a kindergartner and you think, I don't know if they'll know, ask them and see. All of our students are incredibly capable, and this is a chance to let them try something challenging in a safe place with you. So these are, again, just some questions. And if you are like me, and while you're reading, you get really sucked into reading and you don't really remember, I've got some resources for you. So at each of our sites, I have created these little bookmarks and reading question cards, and they'll be available at each site's library by the end of next week. I'm still working on getting them laminated and everything and sent out there, but they have just some great basic questions for you. Some of them, like I said, this one is probably geared more for our K2s. Who are the characters? What was the setting? And some of them are a little bit more challenging. These cards have like questions you can ask before, questions you can ask during your reading, and questions you could ask after. As you're going through. And these are just if you need it, right? If you're reading a book that you've read before, your child has read before, or is just a book that you know well, and you probably don't need something like this. Also, kids might ask questions while you're reading, so you guys can just talk about that too. This is just a resource if you want it. So that's just, I wanted to start with talking about the importance of reading aloud and ways you can read aloud with our students, because again, I think it's a great thing to do as a volunteer, and it's an easy way for them to relax and chill and stuff like that. I want to talk a little bit more about some other resources that I have available for you guys at each of our sites. Of course, every site has a library of its own books. They're all different kinds of books at all different sites, fiction and nonfiction, picture books and chapter books, and some sites have different things. I'm also going to talk a little bit about iReady folders and literacy kits that will be available at each site as well. So in terms of books, as I said, there are so many books at every site, and I don't know what books are at what site and this, that, or the other, but I do know some books that are great for students of different ages. So I just put some of those on here for our K2s. These are all chapter books or short chapter books. That are great fits. Boxcar Children, Magic Tree House, Nate the Great. These are all really great stories that are accessible for our younger students with you reading them aloud, but also still challenge them and stretch their brains a little bit. I also linked a Scholastic Read Aloud list of like a lot, I think 100 books that are great. And this is just a suggestion. Again, I say, you guys, if you have read a book that you really love, if you have children or nieces, nephews, family who've read books that they really like, choose that. Or if our students are saying, I really want to read this book, but it's too hard for me, please read it with me, let them do that. These are some for 3 through 5 as well. Kate DiCamillo is just one of the best. Clearly, I've got her on here 3 times, but her books are wonderful. And Wonder had to put it on there. And again, another Goodreads list of books that would be good for our 3-5s. Not all of these will be at each site. Again, I'm not sure, but the public library is available, or you can just use books that are there and go from there. Really, any chance to get our children into books is going to be great. Another fun thing that I'm working on getting completed, my goal is to have these completed by the end of next week. If not the end of next week, then Thanksgiving time. I'm making literacy kits for each of our sites. And these are mostly just games. So if you're finding that, oh my goodness, this kid that I work with every Thursday is squirreling out today, can't sit still, we can't sit and read a book, let's play a game instead. These are all literacy focused games. Most of them are very phonics and word building based. But all of our students will benefit from them. So I'm also going to have them organized, like K2 and 3-5. So some of our kindergartners could be working on things like rhyming words and identifying letters, whereas our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders might be working on prefixes, suffixes, things like that. But it's all in game form. All of the games will have their directions or things like that on it as well. this is like just an example of like one of the pages that I might have, and all the materials that you'll need for each activity are going to be included with the activity. So if it involves certain cards, I'll have the cards in there. If it needs a dice, I'll have the dice in there. If it needs whatever it is, it'll all be together. So that way you guys can just take the little packet and go with your student and do some work. You probably will have to read how to do the activity. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory though. Like the one on this slide is really just read the word, roll a dice, move the thing, roll the dice, read a word. Not too challenging for you to learn how to do. Yeah, just some fun games. And then the other resource that I have is really just if all else fails, you've got nothing left to do. iReady is a online literacy tool that our students use at after school program. It does a diagnostic for them, and then there's online lessons that they do. Some of you guys may have seen them do it before or had to help them through some of those online iReady lessons. I'm making iReady folders for each of our struggling readers with lessons that are specific to those students' needs. So if they're struggling with rhyming words, if they're struggling with phonemes and things like that, I'll have those in a folder. And each of those pages looks like this. It kind of gives you some background of the skill that you're working on, and then gives different ways to teach or practice that skill with our students. So it has some examples of activities and lessons and things you could do. This really, again, is only if you need it. If there's nothing left for you to do, and only if you feel comfortable with this also. If you're looking at this thinking, whoa, no thanks, I'll just read a book, that's also wonderful. And that is exactly right. So I just wanted to show you that this is a resource available for you. So I'm about to wrap up. So I'm going to let you guys talk to me in just a minute too. But I want to say thank you for working with our readers. I have been consulting with AHC a little bit over the summer. So I went to summer camp and kind of at the beginning of school program and did some reading aloud with each of our students. And they love it. It is so fun to sit and to have groups who think, I don't think I'm going to like this, and then just watch them really relax and tune in to reading and tell me later, oh, that's actually really great. I love that. And as a third grade teacher, I saw that a lot too, right? My students looked forward to read aloud time every day because it is a chance to really not have to worry about much else. You kind of get to be read to, you get to enjoy things. But you're also still learning. It just doesn't feel as hard. So thank you for working with our readers. Thank you for all that you are doing. And now I'm going to open the floor to you. Do you have questions? Do you have comments? What are things that you guys are doing with our students that have worked really well? What questions do you have? Thanks for letting me just talk at you for a few minutes. I really appreciate it. And I'll leave it to you. Or you can put it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable unmuting. I understand that too.
So Laura, this is Lori. I'm at Fort Henry on Monday nights. And last year I was actually, there's different things that happen during segments of the night or the hour or so that you're with them every week. We've had outdoor adventure with us or 4-H, so they're just wrapping up. And so maybe things will change now. But last year when I was with them, I was reading with them. So I was in a small group because there's like 15, and when there's 15 of them, Miss Charday, for instance, has been trying to read to them, and they're so all over the place. And so, talking to each other, their buddy and stuff, so to get them really to focus and concentrate when someone's reading to them, I think is difficult. When we were in smaller groups last year, I was actually reading with them. So I would read a page, and then one of them would read a page, and the other one would read a page. And, I would help them with words they didn't know and things like that. And I felt like that was a really good learning experience. It sounds to me like you feel that there's a different focus this year at AHC for what you want to do with the kids. And I just kind of wanted a comparison from your guys' point of views as experts on that kind of an approach where you're working with them to read and they're looking at words and they're trying to do phonically sound out stuff versus just a little more passively listen, if they're actually listening to someone read to them.
think it could be either way. I really do think that there's benefit to both. I think that because we're seeing such huge numbers of our students who are struggling with reading, it's hard for them to like reading when reading is really hard. So that was the big shift in focus, was just reading out loud with them to help them kind of learn to really like reading, learn to like books and stories and things like that. But I do think you're right. There's benefit also to letting them take ownership and read. You could also do like have them sit next to you while you're reading and they can track along or something like that. So that way, and if they say, oh, I want to read, let them have a chance to read. I think working in smaller groups is probably best, or working even with just an individual student would be ideal. I can understand how a big group is challenging when you don't have all of their attention, but usually if it's a book that they can be hooked on from the beginning, they'll pay attention. And if you can see them starting to like be done, then maybe that's not the time for them, you know. But I do think you're right, Lori, you could definitely do it both ways. You read out loud to them, let them participate some as well. Yeah. Mary, I see your hand is up. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I'm also at Fort Henry. I'm new this year, so it's great to have Lori there who has experience with the program at Fort Henry, and it's great to hear that you did that last year, Lori. I think it sounds like a great idea to work with a small group reading. I've had the great good fortune of being able to read with the kids in a smaller group setting twice during the 6 weeks that I've only been there 6 weeks, the 6 weeks that I've been at Fort Henry. And once it was with just the kindergartners, 3 of the kindergartners, and they, I had brought some books that were given to me. The public library in Arlington has an incredible number of free books to give away. So I'd encourage each volunteer to find the public library nearest to them and talk to the children's librarian and ask them for some free book recommendations for the age group that you're working with. Because I did that with the librarians from, oh gosh, I can't even remember what library it was, whatever library is nearest to Columbia Pike. And it's not the one that's closest to Fort Henry, because that would be the library at Shirlington. But anyway, they graciously gave me basically an unlimited number of books that were individually recommended by the children's librarian. And I took those books, which were all paperback, so they're not expensive books, and gave them to Fort Henry. And when I first gave them, I just spread them out on the table, and the kindergartners just looked through the books. Mm-hmm. So it was, you know, it was kind of like Christmas in October, because there was this huge pile of gorgeous books. And the Price's story I have to tell is, while the librarian was picking them out for me, this was at Paws on the Pike.
Call him, maybe see what he's up to.
Has anybody ever been to Paws on the Pike? So it was great because it was like a dog show, and because there were so many beautiful dogs and nice dogs there. And I was there through the group that does one of the enrichment programs at Fort Henry. Lori mentioned the 4-H, and this year, instead of 4-H, Fort Henry has a Master Naturalist program called the Explorers Club. And I help with that Explorers Club along with tutoring. And where am I going with this? So that's why I was at Paws on the Pike. It's because of being a Master Naturalist. And anyway, so one of the books that the public library gave me is the book Winn-Dixie. Raise your hand if you know the book about Winn-Dixie. So I made sure that I took that copy from the free ones offered by the librarian, that I took Winn-Dixie with me, because I had read it myself, and my daughter, my youngest, had read it and loved it as well. And maybe some of you have even seen the movie. So so I was so delighted that last week when I came into Fort Henry, that was the read aloud that Sharday was doing. And I have to compliment Sharday for being such a great read aloud reader. She reads with expression. She checks for comprehension. She, you know, sort of makes sure the kids are basically paying attention, but she doesn't have a real heavy hand, and she doesn't insist upon absolute positive silence. So she keeps a light touch, which I think is also really good, is just that bottom line that we were given for the Explorers Club that I'll sort of pass along for reading. Just make it fun.
Yeah.
And I'll end there.
Exactly. No, I think that's a great point, Mary. Just make it fun for our students. Absolutely. I agree. I've seen Sade do some read alouds at Fort Henry. She does such a good job, and the kids do seem to really enjoy it. They were one of the groups when I went at the beginning of after school, at the beginning of the school year, and read to them. They were very hesitant at first, but really got into it by the time I was done. So thank you. I see a question in the chat from Debbie. How should we spend our time? I think one of the reasons I brought up reading aloud is because I do think it is a great thing to do for all of our students of all different levels. And you don't really need to know the level that they're at in order to read a book out loud to them or with them. You can also do some of the literacy games. Our staff know pretty well what levels our students are at. So you can also ask them, should I be working on a K through 2 activity? Should I be working on a 3 through 5 activity? They'll know something like that. But I think reading aloud is just a great way to engage your student in something that is beneficial to them without needing to know a whole lot of background information about our students' reading level or things like that, because you are the one who's going to read it. But you can help them with that. I hope, did that kind of answer your question? Debbie, do you have any follow-up? Anybody else have any questions, comments even? Lynn, is that your hand up?
It is, thank you.
Hi. You're
So
welcome.
for a variety of reasons, I've actually only been able to volunteer one day so far this season. I'm looking forward to that finally settling down. And we did a little bit of reading in the time that I was there. It was sort of maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes. And the two girls that I was working with, I don't even know what grade they were, very young, went and grabbed books that I have to say were just awful. They weren't interesting. The kids weren't interested in them. There was no real story to them. And I really struggled with kind of keeping them engaged. So I'm delighted to hear that there's sort of more of a library, that I just need to know where to kind of dip into. And I wondered whether, in fact, these books were familiar to the kids and that they were sort of expecting that that's what they needed to go to when it was time to read. And I just wondered if you could give us a little context about that, because I just didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's different at every site, the different books. Some might just go to the library and pick out a book that looks cool or looks interesting. Others, might have something from school that they have to read. And that could be where that boring book comes in, because a lot of books our kids are getting to take home and practice reading are those decodable texts that aren't super engaging or super fun, but get them practice reading the same sentence over and over to help build some of that.
That's definitely what this was.
Yes. So that's one of those things where I feel like they could practice reading that out loud with you. But a book that you could read out loud to them could just be one that you could either look at the library at the site or just look at some of the lists I've sent and just keep your eye out for something like that. I think most books other than that are much more interesting. So did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I mean, I love to read aloud to kids. I love to read aloud to adults. It's why I volunteered for this. I would be happy to just do nothing but that. And then when this was the book that came forward, I thought, oh, wow, okay, this is different than what I expected. So, but I had no context. So this has been very helpful. Thank you.
So I think you can also be the one who says, I found this book that I really like. Let's try and read it together. You can set that stage for them, or even just give them, like Mary was saying, she laid out a bunch of books in front of them that she got from the library. Lay out 5 or 6 and let them kind of choose, or read a little bit of each one, something like that. So they can still have ownership, but you're making sure that it is a book that's not, I go to sleep here, something like that. Yeah, that was a great question, Lynn. Thank you so much. Thank you guys all again so much. I put my email on here, lainey.parrott@ahcinc.org. And like I said, I'm going to give these slides to Laura. There's some links in them too, so I'll make sure that those get sent in the email for you guys as well, with other resources and things. But
Hey,
yeah,
I
I really,
have, sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, Lainey. I have
No.
one more suggestion, and this is not my suggestion. I see that Laura Noble is on here. And this is her suggestion from a training that we did about literacy last year. But she said that when her students were getting wiggly while they were reading, that often she'll resort to having them draw one of the characters in the book.
I
Or
love
draw, I don't even remember what else she said, but that's a good way to keep talking about the book, but to get the
Yeah.
students engaged in it. So
I love that. That's a really good one.
yeah, I
think
love
that's
that
perfect.
suggestion.
That is thanks, Laura Noble and Laura Jackson also. For that. All right, well, it's 7:30, so thank you for giving me your Monday evening. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
All
Have a
right,
good night.
bye. Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night, ladies.
Thanks,
Bye,
bye, Miss
Sarah.
Norma. Thanks for the applause, Kate.
Oh,
The kids want to say hi. Hello.
Hi, kids.
Bye.
I don't know the
Bye-bye.
first. Okay, bye.
Thanks everybody for coming.
All right, thanks.
All kinds of hearts and applauses.
Oh, okay, how nice. Woohoo.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I thought that was really great.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. All right, let me stop sharing now. Woohoo. All right.
All right,
That
Mary
was
and
good.
Mindy. Thank y'all. I'm going to close off unless y'all have a question. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for doing it, Lainey.
Bye, Laura.
Bye.